Next level is not just the next level, right? It's not just moving into a next level role. It could be in like literally 85 to 90% of the people in any audience I talk to would answer yes to this question. Are you in the same job you were in a year ago today, but the scope is a lot bigger today than it was a year ago? 90% of them are going to raise their hands on that. So that's a next level situation, right? Same job, bigger scope. Are you operating in a situation where the performance bar has been raised since last year? That's usually 75, 80% of the people. Are you operating in a constantly changing competitive environment? That's like, should be 100% of the people. They all are. And what those scenarios, promotion, bigger scope, higher performance bar, competitive environment, what they all have in common, two things. You've got to get different results in each of those different scenarios. And I think they're all next level situations.
Welcome to the TalentGrow Show, where you can get actionable, results-oriented insight and advice on how to take your leadership, communication, and people skills to the next level and become the kind of leader people want to follow. And now, your host and leadership development strategist, Halelly Azulay.
Hey, talent growers. Welcome back. I'm Halelly Azulay, your leadership development strategist here at TalentGrow, and I am welcoming back Scott Eblin this week to the show, and we're going to talk about how to get to the next level of leadership. And he's going to share with you 3 different imperatives that are critical to success as you move into the next level. And we're going to break it down with specific examples. And when Scott shares a personal story at the end, he causes me to want to share a personal story of mine, and he asks me some more questions about it. So there's some bonus content with something that I haven't really shared on the show before. So if you're intrigued by that, listen to the end. Well, here we go. Scott Eblin on the TalentGrow Show. Talent growers, what a treat this week. We have our guest from my very first episode is back on, Scott Eblin. He's the president of the Eblin Group, a leadership development firm committed to helping executives lead at their best and live at their best. For the past 17 years, Scott has worked with some of the world's best-known companies and organizations as a leadership expert, best-selling author, global speaker, and executive coach. Scott's work and experience is captured in 2 best-selling books, The Next Level, What Insiders Know About Executive Success, which is going to be released in an upgraded, renewed edition. We're going to talk about that today. And his other book is Overworked and Overwhelmed, The Mindfulness Alternative, which you may recall was the subject of episode 1 of the TalentGrow Show. And so, Scott, I welcome you back.
Hey, thank you, Halelly. It's great to be back. I'm so honored that I got to be episode 1. And you told me earlier, here we are at episode 110. It's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. It is amazing. It just feels like such a long journey, but it also feels like it was a blink of an eye. So I don't want to assume that people heard the first episode or remember hearing it that long time ago. So. Yeah, so let's make this episode a standalone whole thing and ask you that question that I always ask my guests at the beginning. Tell us about your professional journey briefly. Where did you start and how did you end up where you are today?
You know what? I started out as a Boy Scout. I think that's the beginning of my answer, honestly, because my grandfather was a scoutmaster and he was my idol, and I wanted to be like him. So as soon as I could, I joined the Cub Scouts and then the Boy Scouts. And I was going through a bunch of stuff several years ago, stuff from my childhood, like my mom had saved for me or whatever. And I found this binder called Troop Leadership Development. And it was a training manual. And I was on the beta program for that as a scout. And it was this training manual, train the trainer, basically teaching scouts how to be trainers of other scout leaders.
Wow.
And I was looking through it. I said, holy crap, this is like everything that I've done as an adult is in this book,
Oh, that's amazing. And how old were you when you received that?
Probably 14 or 15.
Amazing.
Pretty early. And I was never an athlete as a kid. So anything that had leadership involved in it, that was kind of what I did instead of athletics. So that's where it started. And, I was corporate private sector person for about 15 years prior to starting the Eblin Group 17 or 18 years ago, and kind of gravitated towards things that were the intersection of strategy and leadership development. I've always really enjoyed thinking and acting on strategy, developing strategy, and executing on strategy. And since I was a Cub Scout, I've enjoyed leadership stuff and leadership development. So I started out as a coach, just almost exclusively executive coaching 18 years ago. And I thought of it as the intersection of strategy and leadership. And, things developed from there. Wrote the first book, The Next Level, that we'll talk about a little bit today. That came out in 2006. And, things just kind of continued to build around that content and those ideas. And, here we are in 2018 talking about it.
Yeah, amazing. Well, congratulations on your success. And of course, as you said, you weren't an athlete before, but in your bio, it says that you're a registered yoga teacher now. Yeah,
is that athletics?
I think that counts. You made it.
Yeah. So I'm a registered yoga teacher. I probably have, honestly, I can't believe I'm going to say this out loud. At age 57, I probably have more hand-eye coordination, definitely have more balance than I've ever had in my life, like sense of balance. I mean, maybe you can talk about balance in the rest of life, but yeah, I got into yoga seriously and like consistently at the end of 2010. I think you and I talked previously about I have multiple sclerosis, and
yes, we did.
A friend of our family who's a health expert and a registered yoga teacher herself said I should do yoga, and she's had really great outcomes with people with autoimmune and neurological kinds of issues. And so I got into it really just to try to begin to heal myself, and that worked, and I've just kept at it. And so, yeah, back in 2013, I guess I did yoga teacher training, the 200-hour kind of entry-level teacher training, and there's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be, but it was a really good experience. And so, yeah, yoga is part of my daily thing now.
Incredible. And definitely talent growers listen to Scott's previous episode, because the story of how he has healed himself, and he's living in a very great condition, I would say, and successfully and productively with MS. And that was not by mistake. It's very, very intentional through his proactive actions. And so he tells more about that in episode 1. So you should go listen to it. Well, congratulations on releasing the 3rd edition of that best-selling book. Yeah, The Next Level. And in it, you describe 3 leadership imperatives that you say are critical to success. You say they are: manage yourself, leverage your team, and engage your colleagues. So in this brief format here, I'd love for you to give us an overview of what you mean by each of these and why are they such imperatives?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So that's actually one of the things that's new about this edition is that language, those 3 imperatives. And what the next level has always been framed around, and it still is, but I've just tried, I'm always on this quest to simplify things even further. It's just like, I want to make it as simple as possible, because I think that people are busy, and, it's just like, I just want to make it super accessible and have it resonate with people as much as possible. So I've always talked about leadership presence in the next level. And one conclusion I've come to in the last 5 or 6 years is I think people like you and me probably talk about leadership presence a lot more than people that are actually in corporate leadership positions themselves, right?
Yeah.
And I sort of like, what do we even mean by leadership presence? You could probably ask 10 talent development people for definitions and get slightly different answers, I tried to break it down in the original editions of the next or first and second editions, and this one too, as sets of behaviors that fall into 3 big categories: personal presence, team presence, and organizational presence. Then I started thinking about it and like, what do people really have to do? Like at the essence, what do they really have to do in each of those 3 buckets? And that's when I came to the language around imperatives, and then the 3 imperatives being manage yourself, because that's like sort of the foundation for everything else. If you're not managing yourself effectively, you're not probably going to leverage your team very effectively. Working through and with your team, you're not going to be able to do that if you're not managing yourself effectively. And there's a lot of reasons why that's the case. And then it's also the foundation. Managing yourself is also the foundation, I think, for engaging your colleagues, because what that requires is some bandwidth, mental and emotional bandwidth, and bandwidth in terms of your time and your energy. And really, that's where so much value is created in organizations, is when colleagues engage with each other and collaborate together, in effective ways. And so those to me are the big three, manage yourself, personal presence, leverage your team presence, engage your colleagues, organizational presence. And again, it's just a quest to keep it more and more simple.
I like that because I think it just makes it a lot more accessible. The language is less obtuse, it just says what it is. I like that. Well, I want to go a little bit deeper into those, but I feel like we're putting the horse before the cart because we're not really talking about the theme of the book, which is moving to the next level. So let's kind of move backwards to move forward. What is this? Like, why did you write a manual for people that are moving to the next level? I mean, I have a sense of why, but tell our listeners why.
Yeah, sure. And that's actually changed over the years too, right? What's changed over the years was when I first wrote the book. The book first came out in 2006, spring of 2006, and I spent most of 2005 working on it. And the audience that I was writing for back then, and I still definitely am writing for this audience, but they're not the only audience anymore. But the audience I originally wrote for were people who were moving into executive level roles for the first time in their career. And I know from experience as an ex-corporate executive, and I know from lots of experience in coaching corporate executives who are new to their roles, especially when they're new to the executive level for the first time, that's a really, really huge transition in people's careers. And you don't know what you don't know, but you kind of know that you don't know it. It's like the known unknowns that they
conscious
talk about.
incompetence. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It's conscious incompetence. Because I talk about that in the book, actually. Thanks for reminding me of that. But I didn't think that. I think that's Ken Blanchard and Paul Hershey that came up with that. But that was the original audience, new to the executive level. But what I've learned over the years from coaching people, and I do, like you do, a lot of leadership development programs and workshops and keynotes and stuff, and just have a lot of opportunities to interact with people out in the world, in the leadership world. And what I've learned is next level is not just the next level, right? It's not just moving into a next level role. It could be in like literally 85 to 90% of the people in any audience I talk to would answer yes to this question. Are you in the same job you were in a year ago today, but the scope is a lot bigger today than it was a year ago? 90% of them are going to raise their hands on that. So that's a next level situation, right? Same job, bigger scope. Are you operating in a situation where the performance bar has been raised since last year? That's usually 75, 80% of the people. Are you operating in a constantly changing competitive environment? That's like should be 100% of the people. They all are. And what those scenarios, promotion, bigger scope, higher performance bar, competitive environment, what they all have in common, two things. You've got to get different results in each of those different scenarios. And I think they're all next level situations. And next level situations, if you want to get different results, as Einstein reminded us many years ago, you probably have to do things differently. Mm-hmm. And so one of the big questions we're framing in the book is, what do you need to pick up and what do you need to let go of from a behavioral and a mindset standpoint to get the different results that are expected of you in this next level situation? And by the way, they're not mutually exclusive. Like most people, if I'm talking to 100 people, most people are going to, leaders in corporate America or the world are going to raise their hand on at least twice and usually 3 and even 4 times on those 4 scenarios. So next level means a lot of different things to me at this point. I didn't start out there, but that's what it means now.
Yeah. And it definitely leads to that overwork and overwhelm that you described.
No doubt. Which is why you've got to manage yourself, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I know that, we just talked a little bit before we started recording about how in this new release, you've actually incorporated a lot of the insights you've learned over the years and about the whole self and managing all of the different inputs and outputs so that you can create a balance of some kind.
Yes, absolutely. And I've gone deeper than I have in previous editions on the next level on the whole idea of managing yourself. I mean, just using that language is new, the manage yourself language, but also just, like you suggested, I've learned a lot in the last 8 years since the second edition was released. I've learned a lot from working with a lot of different clients in a lot of different situations, what best practices are, for most people. And so, I'm trying to present those. And the original book, the original edition had the Life GPS framework that I talked about at length and Overworked and Overwhelmed, but there's still a chapter in this new book on Life GPS, but just with a lot of fresher and newer insights about how you really put it to use, because I've been fortunate enough to see many, many, many people put it to use in, the last 15 years, but especially in the last 7 or 8.
I want to ask you a million questions, and for this to have 3 hours. So because we don't have 3 hours, dang it, I would love one of those stories, like share a story. And I would like to have listeners walk away knowing maybe something practical from each of those buckets you were describing.
Okay, great. Yeah, sure. So let's start with the manage yourself bucket.
Okay.
There's so many things you could talk about there. And we talked about some of them back when we were doing episode 1. A couple of big ideas. One, if you feel like managing yourself is an opportunity because, as you just alluded to, all that stuff that you're trying to keep up with at the next level is making you feel overworked and overwhelmed, you're likely in a chronic state of fight or flight. And your sympathetic nervous system is working overtime. And that has enormous impacts, most importantly, on your long-term health and well-being and your life expectancy. But in the short run, it has a big impact on your professional capacity and your ability to get things done effectively. Mm-hmm. And so 100% of people have heard of fight or flight, and 2% of the people have heard of rest and digest.
Yes.
And rest and digest is the nickname for your body's parasympathetic nervous system. And one of the things that I'm talking about, and this is one, and it's like maybe not one story, but I'll try to get it to that. We hear a lot about work-life balance, and everybody's on this mythical quest, maybe not mythical, but this holy grail kind of quest for work-life balance.
Right.
And I don't think it's the right goal. Because it's temporary, whatever state of balance you have is temporary until the next thing happens and then you've lost it. So what I really prefer to have people think about is life rhythm, not work-life rhythm, just life rhythm. What's your life rhythm? And there are different elements in take music as an example. There are different elements in a piece of music that are more prominent or less prominent at any given time. And it's the same thing with your life rhythm. What are the things that you need in your life to make it more likely that you're going to lead and live at your best? And what kinds of routines, physical, mental, relational, spiritual, do you need in your life to reinforce that at your best state? And I always encourage my clients to look for routines that are in the sweet spot between, on the vertical axis, easy to do, and on the horizontal axis, likely to make a difference. So work in the upper right-hand corner, and let's look for simple routines that'll help you activate your rest and digest response. Rhythmic, repetitive motion will do that. So here's a story for you. We did a program last summer with it's entirely virtual, actually. Never met them in real life, but it ran for 4 or 5 months. These were candidates to be partner in one of the larger public accounting firms. Mm-hmm. And it was on leading and living at your best. And we had them working through the Life GPS framework as part of that. And so what was really cool is you hear stories all the time from people about little things they've done to make it better. And so one guy in the program, I was having a one-on-one coaching session with him. He says, I'm not getting any exercise. I've let that go. And my wife and I don't get as much chance to talk as we used to. And that's bad for relational stuff. And, oh, by the way, we've got a dog who needs to be walked. And so I said, okay, so what's the connection between those three things? And he said, well, let me think about it. And so long story short, he decided he was going to email his wife when we were done, which he actually did this. I followed up with him, and he told me later this was exactly what he did. He emailed his wife, and he said, I would like to schedule 3 dog walks a week with you in the evenings after dinner. And she was flattered that he did that, right? Because it's like, really? That's what they started to do. So, it's like a half an hour walk after dinner. Okay, so now I'm moving. I'm getting some exercise that I wasn't getting. I'm with my wife, and we get to talk uninterrupted for 30 minutes, and the dog gets walked, And so it's just easy to do. Yeah. Does it make a difference? Yeah. And another woman that I was working with in a different program, at her best, she knows that she's grounded. That's one of her characteristics. And so she lives on the West Coast, like you and I both are lucky enough to do.
Yes.
And she decided as a little routine in her life that she was going to start each day in her backyard with her bare feet in the grass for 5 minutes and just stand with her bare feet in the grass. And so that was like literally reinforcing the idea of being grounded, right?
Oh.
And I said, Donna, how did that play out? She said, well, first of all, for me, I'm like a lot more grounded. I'm like a lot more centered at work. And I realized that I was getting involved in way more stuff than I should have been involved in with my team. I was like interrupting and interfering too much. So I backed off. And the amazing thing was like they stepped up so much. They're doing stuff I never imagined they would even ever do. And I said, that's great. So like, what are you doing with all the extra time that you're not being involved? I'm doing the stuff I should do, which is like looking ahead to where we need to be 6 to 12 months from now and what we need to get in place to be there, like the strategic stuff. And I thought that was like such a cool story to me because all of those outcomes started with, I'm going to start my day with my feet in the grass,
For 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. So I don't know. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
But if I was going to say anything, work on rest and digest and work on easy to do, likely to make a difference. I hope that would be the takeaway for people that were listening to this.
Okay, cool. I love it. And by the way, there are studies that actually show that you literally make yourself more grounded by putting your feet in the grass.
I've read, right.
I'm going to try to dig one up and put it in the show notes.
Oh, cool. I'd love it if you do that. I could use a good one.
Okay. Yeah. Challenge on. Okay. So leverage your team. What's something tangible?
Yeah. So the big challenge that almost everybody has with leveraging their team is if you get to a certain level of leadership in an organization, you got there because you have a reputation of being the go-to person. And like, again, if I'm with a room full of 30 or 40 leaders and, how many of you are go-to people, raise your hand. Mm-hmm. If they're honest, they all raise their hand. And then the next question is, so great, what is it that makes go-to people go-to people? What's your answer to that, Halelly?
Oh, they get things done, right?
Exactly.
However busy they are, they'll get it done.
That's the number one answer on Family Feud. They get things done, right? And so everybody answers that, right? So being a go-to person, great thing to be until it's no longer a great thing to be.
Yeah.
And so like, when is it no longer a great thing to be? Like when the scope is too big and you just can't operate that way anymore as like the individual heroine or hero. And so the shift that everybody has to make is that shift from being the go-to person to someone who builds and leads teams of go-to people, and it's like, that's what you got to do. And is put your emphasis on the building the team of go-to people instead of being the go-to person yourself, which means you've got to let go of stuff that you like to do or that have helped you make your reputation up until now. And, you've got to let go of that and pick up the coaching kind of mode. And so I've had lots of different examples of people who have worked really hard to do that. One way to do it, and I've had a lot of clients use this technique over the years, no matter what you're working on, it's really helpful to tell the people you work with what you're working on and what you hope the benefits are going to be of that, and to ask them to help you stick to that. And like ask for action step ideas that are relatively easy to do and likely to make a difference that they can see you doing. And so I really, I've had a lot of clients get involved. I'll give you an example from one guy. It is in leveraging your team standpoint. It's a different way to get to building go-to people. So this guy, Dave was his name, was in one of our group coaching programs several years ago. And he was a senior director, I guess, in one of the bigger defense companies. And he and his team were running part of a big, huge project. And on the green light, yellow light, red light, stoplight measurement kind of thing, they were red on pretty much every factor of the project. Ouch. And when Dave got his 360 back, he scored really low on a behavior we have in the next level 360 on understands the impact of his or her comments on the morale of the organization and makes appropriate choices. Do you understand how you're coming across, basically? And so he got really low scores on that from his team, his direct reports in the 360. And I said, I encourage everybody, you need to go out and learn more about why people said what they said. And he was having conversations with them about that. I said, dude, you're like Debbie Downer. Every project meeting we have, all you focus on is what's wrong. There actually is stuff that's going right, but all you focus on is what's going wrong. And so they made a deal, and this is where the behavioral modification part comes in. This behavior modification technique would apply to anything, whether you're too much in the weeds with your team or you need to change the way that you're intervening in conversations or whatever. He gave his team permission to kind of raise the high sign every time they thought he was going too negative. He was kind of missing the point. So they're in a team meeting, and he's like negative, this is wrong, that's wrong, that wrong. And they had like a 3-finger thing, which we always joke was better than one particular finger. They would raise 3 fingers. And he would he'd catch himself. And it's okay, let me pause. Okay. And so initially the improvement was he stopped being negative. And then the next level of improvement was, oh yeah, there is something that's going right. Let me talk about that. And then the next level of improvement after that was he started thinking before the meeting ever started, what do I want to lead with that's going right? Right.
Oh, this is great.
And so 2 things happened from that. 6 months later, when we do the mini assessment 360, he's a lot better from his team standpoint. Probably more importantly, really actually 6 months later, everything they were measuring was either yellow or green. And there wasn't anything that was red anymore.
Wow.
So the performance, not surprisingly, improved. And the team was able to step up and really be the go-to people he needed them to be because he wasn't getting in their way. In his case, he was getting in their way just by bringing them down, mentally and emotionally.
Yeah.
But there are other ways. Even when you're intervening too much and you're getting in their shorts too much and, kind of trying to be the hero again, that brings them down too. It's really annoying to your team when you do that. It's anyway, I could go on, but I'm not taking too much time on this.
Well, I get you. And, and for him being humble and being vulnerable to say that to them, to ask for their help. And then he needed to model that he means it so that if they took the courage, because it takes courage for them to actually try to give him the sign, it's really important that they don't get any feeling of rebuke from him.
Yeah, totally. That's totally true. You're right. It took a lot of courage on his part and on their part, and it was a terrific example of role modeling. Yes. Role modeling, openness to feedback, vulnerability to change, all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a great example.
Awesome. All right. We need one more example for engage your colleagues.
Okay, so engaging your colleagues is really about playing a bigger game. And my coaching these days is really more, kind of C-suite and their direct reports. So I don't hear this as much as I used to, but when I was coaching individual senior directors and, directors or even VPs, people at that level, when I would do the interviews for them, I'd quite often hear from more senior people in their interview loop, their feedback interview loop. He's really great or she's really great. They're doing a killer job at what they're doing. It's time for them to play a bigger game. And what they meant by that almost universally, it really didn't matter the company, start acting as if you're already there. If you're a senior director, start acting as if you're already a vice president and doing the things and asking the questions and holding the conversations, making the proposals, expressing the point of view that vice presidents do, and start acting as if that's the case. And so I don't really have like a Dave or a Donna name the person kind of story on this one, but I've had a lot of clients who that idea of, it's an opportunity for me. Actually, as I'm thinking about it, I can think of some recently in some of our group coaching programs that have done this.
You want to step back and start that?
Yeah, sure. So here's one way to play a bigger game. Probably it was Hillary Clinton and her campaign for the Senate in New York years ago that popularized the term listening tour. She spent the first couple of months of that campaign going on a listening tour with the people of New York. So, kind of co-opted that term for corporate land. And I really our group coaching programs for the senior directors and VP level people, I always encourage them when we get to this part of the program, the organizational presence, to conduct a series of listening tour conversations. And so there's a woman that was in one of our group coaching programs earlier this year that wrapped up a couple of months ago. What was her name? Rebecca, I think. And she, super talented person, had a lot of cross-functional leverage that she probably wasn't tapping into in her organization. And so by the listening tour, what you're doing when you're conducting a listening tour conversation, this is kind of what jump-started her, was you go out and you ask really open-ended questions of a cross-functional colleague, somebody that you have an adjacency with, but maybe not a codependency with, right? But there are opportunities perhaps to create some synergy. So the very first question on the script, this is in the book, and that part of the book on organizational presence and engaging your colleagues.
Okay.
The very first question on the 7 or 8 question script is, if this year is wildly successful for you and your team, what happens? What does it look like a year from now if you and your team have really just knocked it out of the park? And you just listen to their answers and say, like, so what difference would all of that make if you did that? And I'd like to talk about that. Great. What's your assessment of my team in terms of how we're either helping you or hindering you on that quest? Give me some feedback on what my team keep doing, start doing, stop doing kind of behaviors for my team. And then it kind of leads to, so what can I or my team do to support you on your agenda? And then ideally that goes so well that the other person says, hey, let me ask you the same questions, and go back in the other direction. And invariably what happens, one, is you create a lot of goodwill, because most people aren't usually on the receiving end of those kinds of questions. The conversations that executives typically have with their colleagues are a lot more transactional. They're a lot more short-term focused. Let's solve this particular thing that's right in front of us right now, because that's all we have time for. But to create a little bit of space for that, it's more of a transformational conversation. It's kind of in the sweet spot between transactional and transformational, and you're creating some space with the open-ended questions. You're creating some space with the request to even have the conversation, to just learn more about them with the intent of, I want to help them, and by helping them, maybe we create some stuff together that's like a 1 + 1 = 3 scenario. And I've seen that play out a ton over the years. Rebecca was my most recent example, just in terms of initiatives that her organization needed to pursue that nobody really was pursuing, right? Because they weren't having the conversations. And by taking the initiative to have the conversations, then they were able to identify where the opportunities were.
Yeah, so it's good for her. It's good for the relationship with her colleagues. It's good for the organization. It's good for her team. It's good for everyone. And by the way, listeners, whether you are at that level or not, I think that that's a really good strategy to pursue.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point on that. That's just good no matter where you are in the organization. Yeah.
And lots of people just get very bogged down in their own silo and don't think about that, picking their head up and looking around and actually even talking to other people in that kind of a way, a non-transactional way. Well, Scott, that was good. I am so glad we got some specifics there, and I can't believe we're running out of time. So to wrap up, I know that you have one specific action you're going to share with our listeners. But before that, what's new and exciting on your horizon these days?
A couple of things. So at a purely personal level, one of the things I'm most excited about is about a month and a half ago, I bought a beautiful black Fender Stratocaster guitar. And Fender, the guitar company, they've got this amazing app called Fender Play, where they're in 5 minutes, you'll love this, TalentGrow leader person. In 5-minute lessons, they teach you how to play guitar, and you can pick your genre. I picked rock because I'm like a frustrated rock star. You can pick country, you can pick alternative rock, you can pick, I don't know what else. I mean, there's like 6 or 7 genres you can pick from.
Right.
And they teach you how to play guitar in that genre, starting with, these are the strings on your guitar.
Oh my gosh.
And so I've been doing it for 4 or 5 weeks now, and I know 6 or 7 chords, I know how to transition between the chords pretty seamlessly. I've learned some riffs, some simplified versions of some riffs and some classic rock songs. And I'm super motivated to keep going. I just love that. So that's really cool.
That's fun. And look, you're laughing when you tell me about it. Totally. And it makes your brain hurt, right? You're feeling those neuron connections being formed.
Yeah, that is so true. And
I've been learning accordion. So
have you really? Why?
Listeners don't know this.
Well, here it is. So why? That's a fascinating thing. Why accordion?
All right. This is officially going to make this episode longer. Sorry, guys. Well, my dad played accordion all my life. He started playing accordion when he was a teenager. And when he left high school at age 16, because he couldn't stand it anymore, he sustained himself by teaching Israeli folk dancing while accompanying himself on accordion.
Wow.
Yeah. So I always just associated accordion with my dad. I never personally wanted to learn it, but I always appreciated it. And 6 years ago, my dad died of cancer. And after that, I would hear accordion and just break down and cry. Anytime I saw or heard an accordion, that's what happened. But then later I realized when we had family meals, at some point, my dad would bring out the accordion and all of the grandkids would dance and laugh and play. And it was just something that was so joyous and present in my life always that was completely gone. And the accordion was languishing at my mom's house. And so I guess one day it just popped in my head well, what if I learned how to play it? And then I could.
Wow, so this is your dad's accordion that you're learning on.
I have my dad's accordion.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. So how do you learn accordion? Are you taking lessons from a teacher?
I'm taking lessons. Yeah, I'm taking lessons from a teacher, and I drive to her house once a week, and she gives me a lesson, and then I have homework, and I practice.
That is awesome. How's it going?
It's going great. It's very hard.
I'll bet. That's like a pat your head, rub your stomach kind of endeavor, I would think.
Yes, it is. It's a lot of moving things at once. And I feel like I am holding my breath. I'm working so hard that I sometimes notice I'm holding my breath. I'm concentrating. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to hijack your story.
There's one more question. Have you learned a song yet?
Oh, yeah. Multiple songs.
Cool. What's your favorite?
But they're short and ridiculously simple.
That's okay. What's your favorite accordion song that you've learned?
Oh God, I don't even know what's my favorite. I don't have any none of them are that. No, they're all just sort of little songs. So
I think someday you need to open your show with you playing the accordion as your theme music.
Okay, maybe one day.
Okay, please.
All right. So you said two things. We got one. Good job on the guitar playing. That's very awesome. I want to hear you play one day. What's the other?
Yeah. What's the other thing? This is on my to-do list, and you're my role model on this. I've been working on this for 2 years, and I cannot get past my idiosyncrasies on this, the podcasting thing. I really want to start a podcast and host it. And so I so admire the fact that you are at episode 110. During the entire time that you've been recording 110 episodes, I've been thinking about doing a podcast and trying to get it started. So it's that's got to be the next thing.
What's the biggest hold back? Whatever.
Being a perfectionist, I think. Yeah, I don't want to release something that I'm not 100% happy with from a quality and sound standpoint and all that. And yours is amazing. So, I don't know. I've got stories I need to get over, and I need some help. That's the other thing. I need some help.
Well, so offline, when we get off of this, I am happy to help you however you want. And I also have a great editor. His name is Tom, and he does an amazing job. And you should work with him because that'll take the sound part off of your hands.
Okay. Hi, Tom. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's exciting. We gotta get some movement. So we're gonna talk.
Okay. Good.
All right. Next time you guys hear from Scott, it'll be his podcast.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Scott, what's one specific action that our listeners can take today, tomorrow, this week to upgrade their own leadership skills?
So this might be a little scary for people, but it's actually easier than you'd think. Identify, let's say, 3 colleagues that you trust. 5 is better than 3, but if 5 sounds too scary, stick with 3. And ask them to tell you one thing that they really appreciate about you as a leader that they would encourage you to just totally double down on. and one adjustment that you could make that would make you even more effective. And so if you can talk to 5 people about that, you're going to see a little bit more pattern recognition. And if you want to take it to step 2, this would be like that's week 1 activity. Week 2 activity is to consider the feedback and pick one thing that you want to work on, and then go back to those same 5 people and ask them, give me your one best piece of advice for anybody who's working on being better at fill in the blank, listening without interrupting, or delegating to their team more, or whatever it is. And pick one of those things and start working on that. Put it to work and ask them, kind of like the Dave example that I mentioned earlier in the conversation. Give them permission to tell you when they see you doing that, and permission to tell you when they don't see you doing that. And that colleague engagement is a huge element of how I work with people, because your colleagues see you way more than anybody else ever sees you. You know, way more than your coach is ever going to see you, or probably even your spouse or your partner. You work with people more probably than you see the people that you live with. So get them engaged in helping you be better. And, one thing that they want you to keep doing for sure, and one thing that you could adjust, and then their best idea for a simple to do, likely to make a difference action step that could help you get better at that thing you need to adjust.
Like peer coaching or peer accountability buddies.
Yeah, totally. Exactly
Nice.
That. Yep.
Oh,
Thank
perfect.
you for putting a name to it.
Oh, sure. I love it. Great. Thank you for sharing that, Scott. And thank you for your time today. How can people stay in touch, learn more from you and about you? We'll link to the book in the show notes and to your website. Anything else
Sure.
people do?
So we have 2 websites for you to look at. One specifically on the book called thenextlevel.info. So thenextlevel.info. And then if you want to learn more about the Eblin Group and what we do at the Eblin Group in general, it's eblingroup.com.
And on social media, should they follow you anywhere?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Twitter, LinkedIn, and I'm trying to be more and more active on and do interesting things on Instagram. So if you're an Instagram person, follow me there.
Awesome. Very good. Will do. Well, thank you again. Thanks for coming back. We appreciate your time and all of your wisdom. And we look forward to hearing you play guitar, and we look forward to listening to your podcast.
We'll do a duet with the accordion, okay?
Oh, yes. That would be fun.
All right. Thank you so much, Halelly. I'm really honored to be a 2-time guest on your great show.
Yes.
Thank you.
A boomeranger. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the TalentGrow Show. And I hope that you enjoyed Scott's boomerang appearance on the show. And it's amazing to think that 110 episodes elapsed between the first one that I released with him and now. And I'm so excited. It's been a great journey. He and I chatted about his little podcast challenge, as you can imagine, after we recorded the show. And we are I'm going to push him because he's got so much great amazing things to share and so many great connections of people that can share some amazing content with the world. So why hold back on it just because of a little perfectionism? Because perfectionism is not very helpful. It is a monster. I keep her under my bed and I slay her regularly, and she still sometimes gets the best of me, but it is absolutely not a helpful thing. So do not succumb to perfectionism to stop you from making great progress. And I hope that you will take action to learn a little more about what are some of those strengths and areas for development for you based on your colleagues' feedback. So that's Scott's suggestion that you need to take action on. And then report back to me. What was your biggest takeaway? What did you do? How did it work? I want to know. I want to know, guys. So let me know. Well, thank you. You are here in the back of the podcast club, as always, and I thank you for listening and hanging in there. And until the next time, make today great.
Thanks for listening to the TalentGrow Show, where we help you develop your talent to become the kind of leader that people want to follow. For more information, visit talentgrow.com.